All right, everyone. So you've probably heard me ranting about Greek. That's what I was up to during the break. Are we all fed and watered and feeling ready to take on some more Phrygian? People might not quite be back yet. There's one new message. Good to go from Aaron. All right. We are actually waiting on a couple of people in the room. Might give it another 1 minute. That's 1 minute. 60-second countdown.
This transcription isn't something that's in our text, is it?
Oh, yes, yes. Is it? Could be.
Oh, further on.
Oh, yeah, that's not what we're up to now. Further on.
Well, that's not what we're up to.
No. Sorry.
Okay.
I'd accidentally moved the. All right. Yes, good thing. Let's. Why don't we look at what we're reading next? Why don't we start with that? Here we go. All right. So, actually, I'll just start now. Why not? So the previous monument we read. This is the famous Midas monument. And this is from Midas city. So this is a site in Yazilikaya where there's many monuments. It's presumably a sort of a cult center of Iron Age Phrygia. So now we're moving from there to another site just about 2 kilometers. There you go, 1.6 kilometers away. And it's known as the Arayastin monument. It's another cut rock facade dated from about 550 BC. And so we're still in Western Phrygia. We're just next to Midas city now, really part of the same overall complex. So the name actually Arayastin derives from a Phrygian word, which is on the inscription. The monument is generally interpreted as a dedication to the mother goddess, most likely Kybele, most definitely Kybele, or Matar, as she was referred to by the Phrygians. One guess what that word is. The length of this inscription distinguishes this monument from most other extant Old Phrygian texts, which are typically brief. 3 lines of text are preserved on the monument, including 3 lines forming, sorry, I should rephrase that, it's a bit confusing language. The 3 lines form a triangle inlaying the pediment, which includes a line which translates as Bonok, the Akenanogawos, so now we know what that is, made this mother, i.e. mother goddess, as his idol. So a 4th inscription designated W01B, which you can see on the diagram there, top, is cut above the pediment into the rock face itself. It's included below for us to study. So here we have it. Now, you've got some words in the apparatus right underneath that can help guide you. But still, if you, just as an exercise, try and see how you go with a transcription without the aid of my apparatus. So those in the room, why don't we jump into it? What do we think is going on with this first word here?
Not a Z, it's a yod.
Good, it's a yod. Yeah, so notice that here we have that allophone of iota. And this is a good example of how allophones work, because it's not forming the nucleus of a syllable. It's not the vowel of the syllable, it's an E. It's the semi-vowel form, so it's a Y instead of an E. So we have a different letter representing it in the Phrygian, Y, yod. So we have a yos here. Then notice the word continues, or doesn't. So here we have 2 words that we have what is likely a proclitic yos. And then we have a second word, which is actually declined into a different case. The second word is, anyone want to have a go at reading that out? Oh, no. We have 2 words in line. Yos esite. This is actually 2 words. So this first word yos, what do we think that is? That's
so many times on.
Yeah, exactly. So see, this is one of the things that's quite regularly shared between the Old and Phrygian. It's pronoun yos. Who, and then esite. So here we have a demonstrative pronoun, site. So it's in the dative. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to take that T and we need to treat that as a sort of an enclitic particle that's been added to the word. So the case ending is actually the I, si. So si, it's a dative singular feminine demonstrative pronoun. It's got a different stem to the si, semun, sa, sequence we've seen before. That's from Proto-Indo-European key. This forms from two different demonstratives. This stem S forms from two different Proto-Indo-European demonstratives that have sort of been fused together. There's the anaphoric stem, he, he, which led to is, ea, id in Latin, for example. And the feminine of the pronoun, the demonstrative pronoun, so, sech, tod. So the Proto-Indo-European had two productive demonstratives. It had that were declined pronouns. It had the anaphor, the he type, he type, and it had the demonstrative so, sech, tod. What does that sequence so, sech, tod remind about? So this Proto-Indo-European demonstrative is the Greek definite article, the direct, which was a demonstrative in Homer, as we saw in our Greek reading group recently. It functions, Homer and his imitators. There. It functions as a demonstrative. Now, what we have here is a stem S, which comes from a combination of the stem of the masculine, so, and the vocalization in the anaphor. So it means this thing already mentioned. So this is probably a very emphatic demonstrative pronoun, or I should say not so much emphatic, but that has a strong deixis. It's referring quite closely to something from the perspective of the speaker. And so then we have it declining as a feminine dative singular, so si. Then we have added to it this movable particle, ter, and this is a particle we see in Proto-Indo-European moving around in various demonstratives, and it seems to be the same stem as the neuter of the Proto-Indo-European demonstrative, the tod, the T of the tod. It seems like they would take that T and then they would just apply it as a particle to demonstratives to make them emphatic. And this is happening here. So it's this thing already mentioned, the very one. That is the function of this pronoun. So it's an extremely emphatic and deictically strong demonstrative. So who, yos, ethait, to this very feminine singular. That's our first segment. Can anyone read the next segment?
Matere.
Matere, very good. Here we have a dative singular of matar. Matar. So this clearly derives from mechter. This is the Proto-Indo-European word for mother. It's Greek, meter. We also see reflexes of this in Latin mater and Sanskrit matar. This is kibele, right? This is the word that the Phrygians used to describe this goddess. The name kibele itself seems to come from an epithet referring to a mountain, Kibeleia. That's how she got that name in Greek and Latin. But in Phrygian, her name is Matar. So who aside to this very matar. To this very matar. Next word. Anyone want to have a go at that? So we've had matere. So yeah.
The word text set.
Yeah, that's difficult. That is probably an epsilon. We've seen this word written elsewhere with an E there. Seems like they just either forgot to put the rest of the letter in, or this could be an early example of the hesitation between E and E that we get in Phrygian. Seems like the E and E were probably quite close in pronunciation. So yes, we have.
Letter are we?
Yeah.
So it's the second last letter, the third segment.
Isn't that a lambda?
No. Because we've seen this word written elsewhere, and where it's clearly spelled with an epsilon. So it's not actually a lambda. It's not ewetexetli. It's a strange hybrid. Either it's an unfinished epsilon, or they started writing an E and they accidentally continued turning it into an epsilon and then decided, no, it should be, it's this hesitation between E and I you get in Phrygian. So this is another feminine dative singular. Here it's an adjective, and this is some kind of epithet of Gibele. It's clearly qualifying matere. The ev there, the ewetexete, the ew there, could come from the Proto-Indo-European su, which you'll be surprised to learn is the origin of ew in Greek. That means good. We also see the earliest form of this word we see is in the Homeric adjective eus. We also see it in the Hittite word for good, ashus. Ashus. The tek there, by the way, ewetexete, it could be connected to the Proto-Indo-European stem tek, meaning beget, or it could be connected to dek, meaning point or show. Note that both de and te become te in Phrygian, according to the Loud Verschiebung, so we can't be sure. So it could be something like the good begetter, the begetter of, you know, the good kind of person, something like that. It could be the good guide, the good judge. It's all guesswork beyond that. That's all we can do. It's some kind of epithet of Kibele. All right, anyone want to have a go at the next word? But it's pretty easy.
Wherewith.
Yes, wherewith. Wherewith, well done. All right, this is some kind of adjective. We know because we have a noun following it, which it agrees with. That noun, why don't we jump straight onto that following noun? What do we think that noun is? Onoman. All right, you got one guess what that means. Name, onoma, yeah. Turns out the Phrygian equivalent of onoma is ono. So what we have here with onoma, the accusative form, that final A is a reflex of the Indo-European accusative ending, which was a nasal, which was a vocalized nasal. It was a sound. So for example, the accusative singular of name in Proto-Indo-European, it used the third laryngeal. So we're not really sure, like, you know, how to pronounce this, but if it is reconstructed as is the most commonly attempted version of the third laryngeal, the most commonly estimated hypothesized version, this would be pronounced something like Rnerm. So you said the accusative singular of name in PIE. Rnerm. But from that, we get to onoma, or onoman, Phrygian. Note that when you get a vocalized nasal is that at the end of the word in Phrygian, it becomes it becomes un. When you get that in Greek, it becomes final new. So the ovevin is qualifying onoman, and it's the object of the sentence. And the theory is that this is a possessive adjective. The reason for that is we have a few elements in here which kind of seem to be pointing to a possessive usage, not just the context, but also the formants inside the word. The element win in owewin could reflect an accusative form of swin, which would be an accusative of the Proto-Indo-European reflexive pronoun swear. And swear, of course, we see in Latin suus, sua, suum, for example. We also see it in German sich, by the way. Yes, sich. Yeah. The origin of owe is still unclear, but this sort of this reflexive element in the stem makes people think it's a possessive pronoun because of course suus, sua, suum is a possessive in Latin, and the context would fit the context too, because then if we get to the verb, we'll see we have. I want to try and read that out.
Darket.
Darket, well done. Now we've met one of our unique Phrygian letters. The sort of how would you describe that? You see it written two ways. Sometimes it's got the lower staff, so it looks sort of like a Y with a third central vertical bar. Yeah, and then sometimes it's like, yeah, the bird print or the V with dissecting. Yeah. Now, this has been a serious matter for debate in Phrygian studies. You still see people trying to argue that this is some kind of sibilant based on a formal similarity to the archaic Greek letter Sampi, which if you want to learn all about Sampi, come to my next Languages of Ancient Anatolia workshop, because I'll be reading Pamphylian, where there's actually, it's an Anatolian dialect of Greek where they have a Sampi, and half of the language, Hittite loanwords is one. But no, this is not a Sampi. This is clearly a palatal, and probably just a homophone of an alternate version of the kappa. We see this happen numerous times, where this is just the easiest interpretation of this letter form. And this is one of them. I mean, clearly here we have darket, don't we? We don't have some other word, basset. They place. And again, notice that we have another imprecative formula here in the Old Phrygian. So the syntax here is helping us because it allows us to map on what we know of the language from New Phrygian on the Old Phrygian. So reading what we have so far, we have Yos esite, who this very matere, mother, perhaps mother idol, mother like image of the mother, ewetexete, some epithet, shall we do? Let's just call her mother ewetexete, or wherewin onoman, their own name, darket, places, prohibiting against graffiti. Whoever puts their own name in this, on this idol of the mother. And sure enough, what are some of the most common types of inscribed and graffiti and dipinti that we see coming from not only Phrygia, but like other ancient cultures of the Mediterranean, but Phrygia as well? Names. One of the first things people did when they learned how to write, this instinctive human thing, they always write their own name. The first runes we have are just these old Scandinavian names. The first Phoenician letters we have, for the most part, are names. And sure enough, some very naughty Phrygians were doing it to Mother Goddess, which is apparently. Now, what happens to you if you do that? Good reading. We want to have a go at the next line. Now, this is one thing we need to quickly touch upon. This is boustrophodon. Do we all know what boustrophodon is? Anyone online not know what boustrophodon is? I assume we all know about this strange feature of how some of these ancient languages were written down, left to right, right to left. Okay, very good. So who wants to have a go at reading across the line in boustrophodon?
Okay.
Well done. Now, Alex, sorry, I nearly forgot your name. Just because I'm just checking the chat. As the ox plows, very good. Yes, that's exactly right, Aaron. As the ox plows, up and down, left to right, left and right to left. Lakedoke, well done. How many words is that?
Down, I can see that it's actually two.
It's two. It's two. So we have the enclitic he. Note here that it's got the yod added to the end of it. This is a common variant we see of the Phrygian ke. K. They're basically two variants of the same form. There's a bit of a debate as to lakedo, K. Here the K is the coordinating conjunction for two clauses. Right? Now here it's probably not so much got the sense and, rather so or also. So whoever places their name on this ewetexete mother, on this epithet mother. Also, lakedo. This is a aorist imperative verb, third person singular. It's in the middle voice. We get middle verbs in Phrygian. We haven't really been able to analyze separate passive verb forms yet. Remember that the distinct passive in Greek was a very late innovation in the language. Probably nothing more than a century or so before Homer, they started forming passives in the Greek language. That's a bit of a controversial thing to say, but there's quite a few scholars who argue that's what happened. So Phrygian probably has this double function of the middle, where it can, middle voice can have middle or passive forms. Here it would be passive in sense, but middle in form. The ending edo is a direct reflex of the Proto-Indo-European third-person singular imperative ending in the middle, which was sto, sto. So that's a voiced dental, breathy voiced dental, sto. Now we see this in Greek. Remember that the breathy voice stops in Greek devoiced. So do became to. So this is essentially the equivalent of the Greek imperative ending sto, which is the third singular middle ending. Now the verbal stem, this is one of my favorite words in Greek. This is a cognate with the Greek root lab. So this is a reflex of the Proto-Indo-European stem sleu, which is a taking verb. Now that initial S, that's S mobile. Yeah, it probably aspirated early on in both Phrygian and Greek, and then dropped. We know it aspirated early on in Greek because we have those laconic inscriptions where it's not lab, but it's lab they use here. So, yeah, it's really crazy. Then what happened was that H2, that laryngeal, that dropped out of the language and it turned the E into an R. That's the coloring that we were talking about before. And that voiced labiovelar, the gu, well, that becomes that devoices and delabializes to become k in Phrygian. And in some dialects of Greek. In Greek, you get an alternation between b and k from this gu, Proto-Indo-European gu. For example, in Attic, it's ors. How are you? Ortekis, how are you? In Ionic, but only Eastern Ionic, it's gors. Yeah. So, and indeed, whenever we get these labiovelars in linear B in Mycenaean, it's still gu. For example, it's not basileus in Mycenaean, it's quatireo, something like quatileos, something like that. Tell your mum. We have someone in the room whose mother is an academic that works on linear B. That's why I said that. I wasn't randomly attacking someone in context.
It wasn't your mum joke or something.
Yeah, I just suddenly realized I had to explain that. Now, so what we have here is a wonderful we can do a wonderful formal comparison of the two outcomes, one Greek, one Phrygian. We have Greek labestor and Phrygian lakedo. Let them be taken. Fantastic, I love this. Now, but that's just the first verb of the apodosis. We need to read the rest of it. Anyone want to have a go at the next word?
When
Well done. Right. Let's move ahead to next word.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did you read the next word? But in Phrygian, not in Greek.
Altas.
Altas. And then finally,
Isn't that a yacht at the end?
sorry, thank you. Altai, thank you.
He
Yeah.
analyzed it to it.
And then let's finish it off. Last word. Matere. All right. So the wenautun is kind of the hardest thing for us to break down. So we're going to do that last. There's a lot going on with that word. Autai matere. This is an exact formal equivalent of Greek. Aute me. Oh, hang on. How do you define mother in Greek?
Too much Phrygian.
Way too much.
Thank you. It's well, actually in Homer. It can move around. Yeah. Metri. Yeah, thank you. It's a fleeting after. Thank you. This is an exact equivalent of Greek aute metri, which in Greek, autos has many functions, this sort of anaphoric adjectival pronoun. And we tend to think of it as a third person pronoun because that's what it becomes, both in classical Greek, then regularly in Koine, and today. It's the third person pronoun in modern Greek for the most part. Of course. But in its earliest usage, it's a reflexive or emphatic pronominal adjective. What it either has a sense of meaning the same thing, or it has the sense, when it's applied to a noun, that thing itself. Right? That's the more common usage. And the reason for that is because of the essentially the etymology of this word. So autos, or in Old Phrygian, autar, comes from the Proto-Indo-European adverb heu, which we actually see in Greek as the adverb au, meaning then, verily, something like that, depending on how you use it. And it literally just meant again. And that was applied to the neuter of the demonstrative that we saw before, so, sech, tod. So you had heu tod, that thing again. That's the original Proto-Indo-European formation that led to autos. So it's reflexive and it's anaphoric. So what the sense here is it's dative singular, feminine, and it's adjectively agreeing with matere, which is, so here the sense is it's making the mother emphatic. So we would translate that as matar, herself. So autai matere is matar, herself. Now here, it seems to be an agent. So here we have a passive verb taking a dative to express the agent. So this is actually quite a different formation of the agent to what we end up with in Greek. It's more reminiscent of the ablative case function in Latin. It's possible that the ablative function is absorbed more into the dative in Phrygian than the genitive as it is in Greek. So let them be taken by Matar herself. Now, it's not just let them be taken, but the object is actually stated, and that's what the wenautun is. So this is another pronominal form. So the autun there is what we've already just met, the autai, referring to Matar. The when, this is the reflexive from Proto-Indo-European swe that we get in suus, sua, suum. So this is actually an exact formal equivalent with Greek heautos. The he in heautos comes from that swe element. So this is the exact equivalent of Greek heauton aute metri. So it's let them themselves be taken by Matar herself. So these reflexive pronouns are extremely emphatic, and this is something that you commonly see in the apodosis of these clauses, particularly when they're inscribed over shrines and whatnot, where the threat is that the actual goddess or god that lives in that shrine or is represented by that shrine will do the punishing. What it's saying is, if you transgress in this shrine, in this area, she herself who lives here will take you. Lakedo. Yeah. So sosesite, sorry, tricked me again. Yosesite matere, texete, owewin onoman laket. Sorry, daket. Lakedo, okay, wenautun autai matere. Anyone who places their name on this very matar ewetaxete, let matar herself take them themselves. So don't mess with Kibele. Now, we have another inscription. The ruins of Teria, Palachoyuk. I'm going to skip this one. We will have skipped one new Phrygian one and one old Phrygian one. So there'll be homework for you guys should you want to do it. I think you all should. I think everyone should be doing Phrygian in their spare time, but that's just me. The main thing to take away from this, though, I want to sort of draw your attention to one feature of this. You see the word nekas in this inscription. It's actually easy to see because it's got the reconstructed blue alpha in it. So if you read, it's going from right to left there. So if you look a few letters to the right, you'll see a mekas.
Looks like in the top line.
It is, yes. So this, it turns out, is indeed the Phrygian adjective or great or big. One other word I want to draw your attention to is it begins on the bottom right corner. So it's in the third line. First letters are on the right. It's going from right to left. Does anyone want to quickly read out that word? It is 5 letters long.
There was.
There was. You guys have one guess what this is. There was. This is God, not Zeus. That's die. But it's worth keeping that in mind because both Zeus and there was in Phrygian, Deus in Latin, come from roots in Indo-European that come to refer to gods in other languages. So Zeus in Greek is not cognate with Deus Latin, but it is cognate with Jupiter and what is Jupiter? What's the first element in Jupiter?
Oh, Jove.
Yeah, what does it mean?
Guy.
Day. What's the Latin word for day?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? Because Zeus was a daylight sky god.
Yes.
Right? There are certain languages where that comes to be generalized as God, but then you have another etymology of God, which comes from, and we had this in the New Phrygian part actually, but I skipped over it. So for that I may be punished by Marta herself. So we'll have to see. The Greek theos it comes from Proto-Indo-European noun "duchos," and it means the thing, the put thing, probably in reference to an idol. It is a noun form that derives from that same stem, deh, meaning place, where we get tithemi. So a reflex of that in English is ditch, actually. So it's, yeah. Now, we see in Old Phrygian that is still the word for God, there was, from placing. Right. Now we have just an hour left.
That one doesn't have word.
That one doesn't have word divided. No, so I was very merciful not getting people to read that one. All right, now, what I would like to do in the remaining hour that we have, so this has really been like a very intense crash course. We read a bunch of stuff by ancient Greek authors about Phrygians. That was pretty easy. And then we looked in rapid succession, in quite a bit of granular detail, at a bunch of Neo-Phrygian inscriptions, which are enmeshed in this Greek content, right? So we kind of we're switching from Greek to Phrygian, but the languages are similar. And with the notes, it's pretty easy to figure it out. What I would like to do now for the rest of the session is show you a few short, really interesting things, just a couple of short Phrygian inscriptions. And then I'd like to jump into maybe the calcula with half an hour, 40 minutes left, the Vezirhan stele. I'm going to have a go at reading 4, maybe 5 uninterrupted lines. But before we do that, we have to think about Gordium. So as the seat of the Phrygian royal house, Gordium has often been described as the capital of Phrygia. And while its elevated political and ceremonial status is well attested, characterization of Gordium as the capital of a unified Phrygian state remains debated. The ruins of Gordium, traditionally identified as a major Phrygian urban center, have yielded 259 inscriptions, representing the majority of the known corpus of old Phrygian material. However, the majority of these inscriptions take the form of graffiti and dipinti, found on instrumenta, the small portable objects, which are often no more than 1 or 2 words long, and that's even when they are preserved in their entirety. So a lot of the stuff we have from Gordium, we have over 250 inscribed Phrygian remains, but most of them are like half a name that's on the handle of a jug. Some of the earliest Phrygian inscriptions at Gordium have been recovered from levels within the citadel mound, generally associated with the Middle Phrygian period from the 8th to the mid-6th century BCE. Although they are often short, fragmentary, and undated, the proliferation of inscribed material in Gordium speaks to the central role of writing in the linguistic, administrative, and social practices of Phrygian society during these eras. What that means is, yes, many of the inscriptions we find from this massive Phrygian city, Gordium, which would have been built in the 9th or 10th centuries BC, but reached its height probably around the 7th or 6th centuries BC. is very short, but we find so much of it that clearly writing was really proliferating in Phrygian society from a very early time. Now, even though it's all very short, there are some things that we find from Gordian that kind of, at least for me, really I find very intellectually stimulating. And so I've picked two small finds from Gordian, because you can't do a Phrygian workshop without doing stuff from Gordian. It's the most famous Phrygian city. And so the first one we'll look at is a small alabaster figurine of a falcon from a wall trench in the Persian layer of Gordian. So this is a layer from the 6th century BC, while Gordian and Phrygia was under the dominion of the Achaemenids. It's currently at the Museum of Anatolian Civilizations, but there's no inventory number. So I don't know how to go see it for myself, which I would really like to do when I finally get to Ankara. We're going to try and read it. Now, the apparatus is on the other page, so there's no excuse for cheating. So here's this cute alabaster figure of an eagle. Okay, so you've skipped a word.
Yes.
All right.
Tadoi.
How's it? Tadoi.
Tell with it.
Yeah, tadoi. So that is so annoying, I know, but that is a delta. The Phrygian delta didn't have a base. And that's that yod, it's not a sigma, tadoi. But what do you see as well? A word divider, even on this little depinto, we have a word divider. So it was a regular.
Well, I was surprised that it was not, I mean, the other one seemed to be an exception. All that I've seen so far.
Yeah, yeah. Tadoi, what was the second one? Did someone call it out? Iman? Yeah. Okay. And what about this fourth one? Oh, Alex has it. Bagun. Bagun. Yes, very good. Tadoi, Iman, Bagun. Now, we skipped the inscription from Teria, but in that inscription, we learned that Iman is a very common masculine name. Iman. Iman potentially has etymology to it. It's not necessarily a noun. It could be a name originally from Ratian, actually.
Like there's the modern.
Of course, yeah, yeah. Now, it's a nominative name. So we have Tadoi, Iman, Bagun. Now, if we look at Tadoi, what we see here is quite clearly morphologically dative. And then Bagun also looks morphologically like accusative, particularly when we know that Iman is a masculine nominative, right? So here, therefore, we have a formula: X in the dative, Y in the nominative, Z in the accusative. We see this in not votive offerings, but in personal gifts, inscribed on personal gifts, on small portable items all over the Mediterranean. It's a way of saying who X, for whom X, Y, the agent giving, Z gave the thing. And we understand a verb of giving or something like that. So therefore, Tadoi, Tados, this is the person receiving this alabaster figurine of an eagle. Iman gave it, the giving verb is understood, to Tados. And then what is it? The Bagun. So what we're looking at is a Bagun. Okay, this is how these sorts of giving donative formulas work. The thing in the accusative is the thing on which it's written. So what's a Bagun? Do we have a Phrygian word for idol? That's generally been the interpretation here. But there's another theory which I really like, which is that that it does mean idol, that it's not a Phrygian word, that it's actually a loan word from Old Persian. The Old Persian word for God is baga.
Is this cognate with the Slavic word?
Yes. And so the theory is, because this is from the Persian layer of settlement, that at this stage in Phrygian history, at least in Gordian, they've taken on this Persian word to mean an idol of a god, something like that. So here we might have a Phrygian word, but essentially a Persian loan word meaning idol, image of a god. And I quite like this because it's a little window into, it's a very intimate item. This item is supposedly just like this big. And it's very explicitly, we know from the language, it's a gift. Someone made it for someone. Now, the other thing I'd like to look at is this loom weight. It's an unfinished inscribed alabaster loom weight. All right, now we'll talk more about the details for it, but first of all, what I'd like to do is just look at the image here, the drawing of it. This is basically to scale as well. Does anyone want to have a go at trying to read the Phrygian inscription? It's only 2 words long, and the apparatus is there to help you.
The orientation's whack.
Yes. But it's a small item that you hold in your hand, right? Did you say psi?
Hi.
Oh, so we have the first letter is a
Down.
epsilon, is a sigma. The second letter is an epsilon. And that third letter, not iota, that is. It's a letter that's
It's the one that we don't know.
the letter that's unique.
Like a Sampi.
Yes, it's the letter that's unique to Phrygian that looks like a sampi. We saw it in that alternate spelling of darket. So this is an alternative kappa that they have in Phrygian that looks like a bird print. So here, it's been turned upside down. That's the letter. Does anyone want to have a guess at what the next letter is?
Maybe reading.
You read it backwards and then kind of go.
Right to left.
You have to turn your page basically upside down.
Yeah.
The next one in
As in epsilon.
that's all.
Yep, so we have sigma, epsilon, the variant kappa, epsilon, and then what's the next letter? I'll give you a hint, it's upside down again. They've inverted it again.
Yeah.
You've got to turn your page again to read it, and it's also at quite a sharp angle. It's a bit diagonal.
Long.
It's a lambda. Can you find that out? Sigma, epsilon, kappa, epsilon, shekel. Shekel.
Shekel, yeah.
So shekel is a clear borrowing from Aramaic shekel, which means weight, which we get obviously the modern word shekel, also the Greek word siklos from. This is a weight. So the Phrygians here have taken this Phoenician word at this early stage to refer to a unit of measurement of a weight. This is typologically a very common type of artifact that we see throughout, particularly the Phoenician Eastern Mediterranean. There were these individual small weights that would have shekel written on them, and then they would have an adjective qualifying the shekel to describe what city counts as a weight of measurement of 1 shekel. So a shekel wasn't a standardized measure city to city to city. It just meant sort of single unit of measurement. Yeah.
Actually, never mind.
Okay. And so that's what the second 4 letters we have are.
Yes.
Right.
I'm assuming it's like, shouldn't it be sight?
No, so
No, because you're kind of written around it in a circle.
this is what you call reverse boustrophodon. It goes from left to right, and then right, it goes from right to left to right, but then the lines don't go down, they go up.
These lists are very big. Yeah, I guess, okay.
Yeah, well, it's unfinished. And this is actually quite typologically common. We see very similar types of artifacts, but generally written in Phoenician. Many of them found from Cyprus and the south coast of Anatolia. There's quite a few comparanda that you can find for this type of artifact. But this has been considered as essentially proof that this is why this must be the reading for this letter form, this variant cup. Because here we see a clear etymology from the Aramaic or Phoenician. They're both the same word. And we can map this onto a large body of artifacts that we find in languages that we do decidedly know, like Finnish. Atias is thought to refer to perhaps a Bithynian city, which is sometimes written as Tieion, Yosotei. So it's basically thought that this is what counts as 1 shekel in the Bithynian city in the east coast of the Bosphorus. Shekel of Tias. So that's how we read that. I know it's quite tricky, but the main thing that guides us in that is the large body of Phoenician and Aramaic loom weights that are structured, that are built along this, that basically have the same features. Now, this loom weight is amongst three other fragmentary inscriptions. The oldest Phrygian inscription.
I'm gonna change the screen.
Oh, sorry, guys. My apologies. I assume everyone is able to keep up with me as I'm reading along, but this is what we're looking at right now. Apologies to everyone online.
It's loom weight,
It's an unfinished loom weight.
only have a hole.
The whole, yes, the whole started to be incised through it, but didn't make it all the way through, which is why it's not on the drawing. It's actually an unfinished. The whole thing is unfinished, but it's clearly, like, typologically an unfinished loom weight. So this is the oldest. It's equally dated with a couple of other inscriptions. The oldest Phrygian text that we've found. It's been found in the destruction layer at the Gordian Citadel Mound, and that was traditionally thought to have dated from the Cimmerian invasion of the area. And we know where that happened from Neo-Assyrian records. It was in 710 or 709 BC. And this is what Herodotus says led to the fall of the Phrygian state. So historically, it was assumed that this destruction layer at Gordian was the Cimmerian invasion. However, following a re-examination and a re-evaluation of the material, ignore that lead, delete that. This layer has now considered to be a consequence of an accidental burning that was dated around 800 BC. Worth noting at this time, the oldest Greek inscriptions that we've yet found come from about 750 BC. So what you're looking at is clearly written in a very, very prototypical form, the Phrygian alphabet. It's early on in its development. The letter forms are very, but we get this for forms of Phrygian written at least, because it was deposited in the ground, at least. So it could have been formed 10 years before that, who knows, but at least 50 years, roughly, for the oldest Greek inscription that we have. Now, so this is why, now, of course, there could be other Greek inscriptions that we haven't found. But this is why it's actually quite an outdated factoid that is often shared about the history of the Greek alphabet, that it was taken from the Phoenicians, and then various other Anatolian peoples adopted it very early on, like the Phrygians. The fact is that the oldest Phrygian inscriptions that we have are 50 years older, the oldest Greek inscriptions that we have. And I would just I just find it interesting that it suggested as much that the relationship could have gone. The Phrygians didn't give it to the Greeks, which is personally not what I think happened. You don't see that. Another thing to note as well is that Greek doesn't have letter dividers, but Phrygian does. So in many ways, Phrygian is a more archaic form in terms of how close it is to Phoenician, the alphabet. All right, now there's one more.
Just before you move on,
Yep.
a question then asking if the Phrygian name Baba would be related to the old Persian Baga.
No, it wouldn't be, because of the Baga goes back to a Proto-Indo-European root that wouldn't have had an outcome in Phrygian as Baba. It would have had an outcome in Phrygian as Aka, like that. All right, now, before we go into the big final inscription, there's one more thing I want to show you, one interesting little old Phrygian inscription. And this is a Phrygian text that was found amongst cuneiform tablets at Persepolis. We're moving far away from Anatolia now. So Persepolis was a ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire from approximately 550 to 330 BC, and it's yielded a vast corpus of administrative and economic documents. The majority of these consist of clay tablets and fragments inscribed in, who did Chris Haddad's Old Persian course? Maria, what was the most common language used in the Old Persian administration? It wasn't Old Persian. It was Elamite or Aramaic, yes. So the most common language we see on these clay tablets that were excavated from Persepolis is Old Elamite, written in cuneiform, as well as quite a bit of Aramaic as well. An unusual discovery occurred in 1933 during excavations of the fortification wall at the northeastern corner of the site. Several tablets in other languages deposited in a group of rooms associated with fortifications were found. These included a Neo-Babylonian legal document, a brief Greek administrative text, an Old Persian document, which is actually very rare and quite good.
The inscription
Exactly, yeah. It was quite remarkable to find that. And the least reported of the bunch, Phrygian document, apparently some kind of economic document, an economic text, in Old Phrygian. These have been dated to between 509 and 493 BC. So you're looking at that now, there's a photo of it. So as you can see, it's very fragmentary. Clay tablet found in the Persepolis archive among Elamite artifacts. It's likely linked to the Persian administration, and though it's damaged and hard to read, it seems to list workers or goods and individuals similar to other Elamite texts in the archive. Now, here you can see, it's quite remarkable, I think, to see these Phrygian letter forms that we're quite used to reading inscribed on rock, impressed in a cuneiform clay tablet. And this really speaks to kind of how linguistically diverse and rich really the old Persian and administrative culture in Persepolis must have been, that we don't really see much of. Now, does anyone want to have a go at reading? Let's continue to scroll down on the screen so that the others online can benefit from what we're looking at. All right, I'll break it down for you guys. Notice that I've given it in transcription because I didn't expect anyone to try and actually read this. So we have in line 1, ekes, we have 3 dashes and another 3 dashes, and then we have what must be an E. All right. Then a line below that, we have 3 dashes after a lacuna. We have rekes, presumably the same word as the first line, but fully preserved. Below that, we have 3 dashes, knice, 3 dashes, and then an S, which we're not really sure what to do with. The line below that, we can just read an iuri, but no one really knows what to do with that. That's why there's question marks after that. Then we have 4 dashes. Then we have nikes, 4 dashes. Marques, 4 dashes. Then we have a large lacuna. Then we have anamaka. Now,
Good night. Yes.
you want to have a go? Grace is hazarding a guess at what one of these words might be. Which one do you think? Of what?
Good night.
Yes. So this fragment of the Persian economic administrative tablet, whatever, from Persepolis, written in Phrygian for one reason or another, is how we can form the paradigm of the Phrygian word woman. So if you look at it in the third line, knice, this is the nominative singular of woman in Phrygian, knice. So here we see a clear reflex of Proto-Indo-European nech. I'm sorry, it's not very pretty, but that's what woman, the word for woman.
That's like same.
Yes. This is extremely significant. It's extremely significant. So Gwenech in Proto-Indo-European, sorry. Yeah, Gwenech in Proto-Indo-European is how we get Gune. It's also where the Armenian word for woman, yin, comes from. Sanskrit words for goddess as well, Jani and Na. But also the English word queen. Now, something very unique happens in, and so here we can see the regular Phrygian Lautverschiebung at play. So that Indo-European voiced labiovelar, which we actually still have as a labiovelar in Germanic languages, like queen, but generally was simplified in Greek either as a simple bilabial, per, or a simple palatal, k. And in Phrygian, it becomes a simple unvoiced palatal, k. We see that here, kn. Then it's an athematic nominative singular, knice, very regular. We see that the long E in Phrygian air becomes, in Proto-Indo-European air, becomes ah in Phrygian. So the regular sound change as well. But the only language in which we get this extra kappa added into this, the declension of guner, woman, is Greek. No one knows really where it came from. And it's extremely strange that guner, in the nominative singular, becomes gunaika, gunaiki, gunaikos, etc. No, it's not an original part of the stem. We know that from comparative philology. It was added in, but only in the oblique case forms, that second kappa. It's unique to Greek. And Phrygian.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I was about to say it's right here.
Yeah. So this is like one piece of evidence that we have the extremely close relationship between Greek and Phrygian. And we call this an isogloss. 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 This is when you can find a feature of a language that is shared in another language, but no other languages. That's an isogloss. And this is how we create these language families. We find isoglosses between languages. The more that they have, the more closely they must be related to each other. And Phrygian and Greek share a lot of isoglosses. This is one of the most significant ones. And we've found it because knice occurs in New Phrygian, but only in the nominative singular. The only reason why we know this is because this random fragment of Phrygian turned up in Persepolis. I think that's fantastic. All right, now we have 35 minutes left. Everyone's tired, everyone's exhausted. Do we feel ready to handle the Vezirhan Stellae?
Yes.
Let's give it a go. All right, now let's look this. Could the Phrygian name, but yes, that's Kira's already helped us out with that with the online. All right. At some point I have doodled the yeah. Is that I did this? Oh no.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, let's get rid of that. That's fine. You can have some squiggles on our page. Now let's rotate.
Wow.
Now, for those of you who've been following us online, here we go. Oh, I've scribbled all over. Oh no, I've scribbled all over the Vezirhan Stellae. It's gonna kill me. All right, so this is on our flyers. This is arguably the most famous Phrygian monument. And so it deserves its own spiel. And I've written not so short one. Speed on what they're looking at. This will be our last reading. So the Vezirhan Stellae, named after the town in Western Turkey, where it was discovered in 1970, is one of the most significant and distinctive texts in the Phrygian epigraphic corpus. It preserves the longest extant Phrygian inscription and represents the earliest known example of a Greco-Phrygian document. This is Old Phrygian Greek. There's a couple of examples. They only kick in at the very end of the Old Phrygian period, as you can imagine, and this is one of them. It comprises 13 extended lines of Old Phrygian and 7 shorter lines of Greek inscribed on a Greco-Persian style monument. Located in ancient Bithynia at the easternmost extent of Phrygian cultural influence, the stella's presence in this region and at a relatively late date is especially notable. Although dated to the 5th century BC under Achaemenid rule, the Phrygian text is unmistakably in Old Phrygian, making it among the latest known examples of the language. The Greek inscription, likely added later, and that's obviously of the Old Phrygian stage of the language. We have New Phrygian examples from much later. The Greek inscription, likely added later, appears to summarize the Phrygian portion. So this is as close as we get to a bilingual, to a Phrygian Rosetta Stone. Nowhere near as good as a Rosetta Stone. Not a true bilingual, but the Greek text can inform us a lot about what's going on with Phrygian. We otherwise would really struggle to read. The stela likely marks a sacred precinct, and its reliefs depicting a goddess, banquet, and hunt underscore its ritual function. The variant of Old Phrygian employed on the stela shows significant divergence in letter forms, most notably in the rendering of the yod and sigma. The atypical ductus, the style and flow of the writing, presents ongoing challenges for producing a reliable critical edition of the text, especially as this orthographic variant lacks word boundaries. Sorry, Maria. Scholars debate as to whether these features represent a late developmental phase of the Old Phrygian script, a regional variant, or an anomaly. In 2013, Anna Hamig proposed that lines 8 to 13 of the Phrygian text comprise an extended series of imprecations against violators of the monument, an idea supported by the Greek summary. Drawing on parallels from the New Phrygian corpus, she applied a combinatorial approach to compare the syntax with imprecatory formulae, producing a tentative translation of the entire passage. That's the 8 to 13, lines 8 to 13. It's currently the longest continuous Phrygian text to have been transcribed as tentative translate. So here we have it. You see there's the Greek on the top and the bottom and the Phrygian in the middle, and I've sort of highlighted the imprecation. And as you can see, the letter forms are indeed quite different to what we're used to. That's why I've provided it in transcription. Don't worry, we're not going to have to try and transcribe this thing. That would be cruel and unusual.
It goes from right.
It goes from right to left, yes, yes.
What's the transcription?
So top right would be, the transcription's on the next page. Yeah.
It's a yos.
Oh, yes, yes. So if you basically, what you see in transcription corresponds with what you see in the window. What you see in the transcription on this page here, which I will the right way up for the online cohort's benefit, corresponds to what you see here. So if you want to have a go at reading the yourself, have fun. Now, before we do that, though, I'd like us to quickly read the Greek. So Greekists in the room, unite. Let's read the Greek. Now, that word that you see in the Greek, that's called capitals. When you see that in a transcription of an inscription, it means it's undeciphered. So it still sometimes happens even with Greek inscriptions, that there's a word that we just can't figure out what it means. And when you see that in an edition of an inscription, they're left in full caps, no accents, nothing. So that emegemas, whatever that is, we don't know what that means. But apart from that, let's read what we can. Who here is familiar with the older inscribed versions of Greek? No, Eta, for example. Oh, yeah, you're okay with that. So how about Alex, to my right? How about you help me out with Palaias abictu pais?
Palaias abictu pais emegemas nethe.
All right. Yeah, why don't you read the whole?
Hostis peritohieron kakur getesai drun ekopsai me bios me gonos ginoito.
Can you translate that off the top of your head?
So, Palaias, son of Abictos, I'm guessing that's a genitive.
Yes.
Maybe. Oh, well, yeah, we got the pais afterwards.
Yeah, yeah.
And then this word, which we have no idea.
Probably a title.
Okay, yeah. Put this up. Erected this. Whoever. Wait, that looks like a future. No, hold on. No, sorry. That's an infinitive or something. The kakur getesai?
Yeah, kakur getesai is an optative, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. So whoever, actually, like around the holy thing, like about this or this holy object.
Yeah. Sacred precinct. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Might do harm.
Might do harm. Yeah.
Or
yeah.
What's drun?
Drun is wood, a spear, or a tree.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yep.
Here, likely a tree.
Yeah. Or strike a tree or something, knock down a tree.
Or
so like it's cut.
Yeah. So we have ekopsai. Yeah.
Understand to him, less not life, let not offspring happen.
Yeah. May he not have life or offspring. Yeah, exactly. So if he does any wicked act around this sacred object or sacred precinct, or
cut down a tree,
cuts down a tree, may there be no life or children to him. And then we have at the bottom, hello. You're here for the very insane, difficult thing at the very end. Well done. I know you've got it online.
Thank you.
All right. And Levi, can you do the second?
The second bit of Greek.
Yeah, the second Greek at the bottom.
Poi ginos conti entare conti porakai agata.
Do you have it?
And to him, anaginos conti.
Anagignosko is a Greek word of reading.
Yeah. And to him who reads
Here.
Here.
Yeah.
Conti. That's
Having arrived.
from airport and can't. Yeah.
So he who has arrived here, he who is here reading, having come here.
Many good things.
Good things. Don't do anything wrong and don't cut down a tree. But because you're here and because you're reading this, good wishes to you.
It's like from a Zelda game or something.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's half the reason why this is fun. Sometimes reading this stuff is like playing a video game. All right, now let's look. So this Greek is going to help us with the with the Phrygian. There it is again, this crazy form of Old Phrygian there. And I could tell you a little bit more about it if we have time. And then we have, okay, here we go. I need to take a deep breath for this. Ooh, let's read 5 uninterrupted lines of Old Phrygian. How do we feel? We feel up to it. Who wants to read the first comma? Now, everything that you see there in squiggly brackets, you can ignore, which is basically always just going to be one letter, something like that. Oh, come on. Okay, good on you, Grace. You'll start us off up to the comma.
Yes.
Now, I expect a perfect. Remember, there's a lot of Greek interference happening at this point. And Persian too.
He asked, oh, Shin,
Stint.
Shin,
Yep, well done.
이면은 각각 Oskavos Kakei, Han, Vedasiti.
Well done. Now let's get someone else. So this is, hint, this is the protarsis.
Yosni.
Yosni. Now let's get someone to read the apodosis and then we'll translate.
I can.
She will do it next one. You'll get a harder one, don't worry. Go, Claire.
Okay. Tubetiv.
Tubetiv.
Okay, that's a B. Tubetiv vi nervos.
Oi nervos.
Oi nervos. Dereliv. Mekas. Kill.
Hey.
P. Kovis. Abretu nun.
Abretoi nun.
Abretoi nun. B.
Ibe.
Ibe. Nevotan Niptian. Thiron Mireio.
Well done. And that nevotan niptian, that phrase is one of the most famous things from this. Well, famous, it's a very obscure subgenre of philology, but famous to Phrygianists when Anna Hermig realized what nevotan niptian meant. She really cracked open this whole inscription. Okay, Yos.
Academics say, as it is well known.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
10 people.
Yeah, no, yeah, true. I wish there were 10 people in this field. It's actually about 5. All right. Yosni.
Yosni. Is that whoever?
Yes, so you see here we have the new Phrygian helping us with the old Phrygian. Whoever. Now, art stint. This is where Hammig's work was so good at figuring out the word boundaries. Art here is a preposition, meaning around. Takes an accusative. It's clearly from the Proto-Indo-European per, meaning arrange or join, from which we actually get the Greek word for chariot, harma. It's a joined thing. As well as the Greek adverb ara, decidedly, logically, it's more of an abstract idea of joining, like it connects. It's kind of the sense of ara. And a T suffix, which we don't really know what to do with. It's weirdly cognate with the Lithuanian preposition arti, meaning about, near. Of course, Jude's that.
Literally walked out.
Quick, Jude, quick. I've read something in Lithuanian. Anyway, yeah, so this preposition is a strangely close cognate of the Lithuanian preposition arti, meaning about, near, or beside. Yeah, so we have a preposition in Phrygian, art, meaning basically the same thing. Yeah, cool, nice. Yeah, I know, but it's Latvian adjacent. I mean, it's not really, because it's a Lithuanian an Indo-European language, and Latvian is not, so. Oh, no, sorry, I thought you said Livonian, Latvian, there you go. It is adjacent to Latvian in multiple ways. Okay, so anyway, moving on. I just assumed you would say Livonian. I don't know. Okay, everyone. So what we have here is whoever, Yosni, art, around, sin, Maria. What do you think is sin? it's this demonstrative stem that we've met a couple of times before, demun and si. Here it's a masculine accusative singular. And then do you remember that t article that we can add on to demonstratives to make them in? Here it is, sint. Now, so it's accusative singular, so it's qualifying imenan. Now, imenan, it's an accusative singular of a noun iman. This isn't the personal name iman. We actually have homonyms in Phrygian. Somehow we know so little about the language, but we've found a homonym already. So there's the word im. Oh, trust me, it is. I've looked into it. It is.
So nice.
So we have the personal name iman, which we saw on that little alabaster eagle. This isn't that. This is another word, iman, which means shrine. And we know this because this corresponds to where we saw the word hieron in the Greek tense.
Yeah.
So if you ever need to know what the Phrygian translation of hieron is, it's iman. And in the accusative imenan. Now it's derived from a Proto-Indo-European compound of the verbal root men, menor in Greek, meaning stand fast or remain, and the preposition hen. So it's strangely formally equivalent to the Greek adverb emenes, meaning unceasing or eternal. So etymologically, it could have some meaning like the eternal place, the unceasing place. You can see how that could come to mean shrine.
Is it in relation to the imam?
No. But it does have some funny cognates with Old Irish, which I was going to add that in, but then I just didn't have the time.
So right.
Next word we have kaka. Alex, what's kaka? Bad or evil things, but here it's in the plural. Yeah. Oscarwas. All right, now this is where it's a bit theoretical, but it actually fits. It fits the context and the information that we have from the Greek quite well. You have to take Oscarwas and kake together, but what I'll do is I'll sort of put that aside so we can finish the protasis. So let's return to kaka. So we have kaka. Then let's go to the second last word of the protasis, Khan. Does anyone want to have a go? Does anyone recognize anything about Khan? I'd be impressed if you did, actually. It's a bit of a rude question. Do you remember when we had kin ages ago? It was kakun, it was murunkin, I believe, or kakunkin. So anytime.
Bit or something.
Yes, exactly. The indefinite adjective, meaning a kind of thing. Well, this is a fossilized accusative form of that adjective. So it equates to the Proto-Indo-European accusative of the indefinite, which here has become an because of the simplifying of the labiovelars. So this is a fossilized adverbial accusative from Indo-European. In Phrygian, as Khan, the sense somehow or in any way. Okay? And then we have the verb, audacity. Now, this is there's so much going on with this verb. So let's just quickly translate what we're up to now. So we can just sort of focus on the verb, and then I'll get back to Oscarwas kake at the end. Yotni art sin imenan, whoever around this very, it's emphatic because of the T, shrine, Khan in any way, kaka, bad things, the audacity. Now, do we remember, do we remember adaket? Yes, now this is time and again the verbal root stem that we get used in these, for this phrase, meaning do a bad act. Now we have a form of that here that's traditionally been interpreted as either a present or a perfect subjunctive. Now, let's look into this a little bit. We've got the stem da, all right? And then we have the ending e, all right? Now, if we think about the Proto-Indo-European active personal endings, they are singular. Yeah, in the athematic. Thank you.
C.
C, T. Now, the T of the third person singular became C in Greek, which is why, for example, you have didorsi. He gave, he gives. Now, in Homer, you can sometimes use these old third person singular athematic forms in the subjunctive. Okay, so for example, you have the verb say phoreo. Okay, I habitually convey something. Phoreo. Right? It's an iterative form of phero. If you want to make that subjunctive third person singular in Homer, you can form that with phore e si. Use the old third singular athematic ending si. And this seems to be an old way that the subjunctive formed in Proto-Indo-European. You take an athematic ending, mi, si, ti, and then you add a thematic vowel to it. So that's one of the reasons why they're thinking this might be a subjunctive, that this T you have here with the yod added at the end is actually the old Indo-European third singular ending. Now, we have the reduplication, okay, that suggests that it's probably perfect, right? Dedasi. However, remember that Phrygian has this hesitation between e and e. We've seen it numerous times. E and e tend to swap out. And we have formations in Greek and other languages where you get reduplication in the present. And something in particular that you tend to get with the present, when you get reduplicated present verbs like didasko, what else do you get in those forms? You get the infix, the inchoative infix, sk. And it looks like here what we might actually have, didacity, is a form strangely equivalent to didasko. We have the stem da, we have the ending t, we have the reduplication de, so we're left with this c, which according to the Lautverschiebung, right, the k in the score, scare, in Proto-Indo-European is palatalized, ch, like sh. Yeah. In Phrygian, this simplifies to c. So it looks like we have the inchoative infix here, c. So this sequence that you get of reduplication and an encodative infix is very commonly used with the present in Greek. So it's kind of a coin toss as to whether it's perfect or present. Very rare to see the encodative infix with the perfect.
Yeah, it's a stative and an encodative is just.
Yeah. However, it could also help lend to the interpretation of this as a subjunctive, because in Armenian, that encodative infix, they generalize it as a marker of the subjunctive.
It would have been.
It's C as well.
C. Okay.
Yeah, or sometimes a sh sound. Yeah. So so it seems like we quite likely have a parallel formation with Greek and Armenian, where we have either a type of subjunctive that's being marked by this encodative infix, or we have a type of present that's being marked by reduplication and the infix, or we have a perfect that's being marked by reduplication. It's very difficult to tell. There's so much in this morphology to unpack that the Phrygians have put together into this verb.
Yeah, it's sort of looking like that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I know, this verb,
Really neat.
this verb form is fantastic. There's so much going on with it. So what I think the best thing to do is translate what's going on and see in context what kind of sense might work the best. Now, so let's go back up to our Phrygian. Okay. Kaka oskawos, kake. Notice that we have, so this would be the object kaka of the verb. Third person singular. Whoever places or has placed or should have placed, depending on the mood, evil things around this shrine. Oskawos kake, the interpretation of this is that oskawos is a perfect active participle. That was ending there is how you form perfect active participles in Indo-European. The infix is war, and then you add your personal endings. This appears in Greek as the long omega we see in the nominative masculine singular, perfect active participles. So for example, of lelukos, right? And actually, according to the Lautverschiebung, we would expect that to appear in Phrygian as a long U, which we can interpret here, uos. In terms of what the verbal stem means, we're not sure. But if you take this as an instrumental dative, we could take this as a circumstantial participle clarifying that they intended to do the harm. You see, if oskawos is a verb of intending or thinking, then you have the phrase, anyone who somehow does evil around this shrine, intending evil, with evil intent. So if you accidentally commit miasma in the precinct, you're not going to be cursed. You accidentally step on a sacred Catholic or something, right? So this is actually quite a logical interpretation to clarify the sense of this passage. But we haven't been able to find an etymology for oskawos. But kake is clear. So that's why I say this is tentatively translated. All right, now let's do the apodosis. Tubeti voinevos teraliv mekas ke kois apretoi nunibe nevota nipti ansirun mireyun. Tubetiv. The form of this is very strange. So here we have the apodosis for our benefit. Tubetiv voinevos teraliv blah, blah, blah. But we know from the syntax of all of these apodoses in, many of these apodoses in the New Phrygian text, that this should be the verb of what will befall the person who transgresses against the holy precinct. Now, tubetiv isn't a clear verbal form, but the stem tub actually matches very nicely with the stem we get of the Greek verb stupelizdo. We also have tuptor as well, but the tuptor comes from a different formation, because that wouldn't be tub, that would be tup in Phrygian. But we have tub here, which must come from but that comes from the stem of stupelizdo, which would have been the Phrygian, the Proto-Indo-European with s mobile, tub. So what this means is that the s is optional. Some forms of the word derived from the Proto-Indo-European verb the s, and some don't. And that's why the s here is in brackets. And we see that with quite a few Proto-Indo-European words. A famous example is the snow word. So snow in Germanic languages has the sequence sn, snow. It comes from snech, all right? But the s in snech was s mobile or s optional. It seems like sometimes the s was there and sometimes it wasn't, because we have a bunch of languages where the word for snow doesn't have any s at all. For example, Latin ix. Well, that comes from Latin. Yeah. It's s mobile is always at the word boundary at the start of the word, and it's thinking the interpretation is that this is an ancient form of rebracketing, kind of like what happens with say ada in English. The word is actually nada, but we got rid of the n from the beginning of the word in confusion with the n of the English indefinite article. And ada, actually a nada. And then that led us to rebracketing it as ada. So the theory of s mobile is that the Proto-Indo-Europeans were doing that with word initial s. They were unsure whether it was the ending of a previous noun, like a nominative singular, or the beginning of the next word. And that explains why sometimes you get words beginning with s and sometimes you don't, coming from the one root. So the theory is that tubetiv, even though we don't get the s in the Phrygian, we get it in the Greek, but they both come from this root meaning to beat. The ver at the end of the verbal form is quite tricky, but the T is clearly a third person singular ending. And so that V is a bit of a problem. It's not impossible, however, that it's just some kind of spelling mistake. If we take this as a verb, present subjunctive, third singular, it means may they strike. May he, she, or it strike. Oinevos, to him, of him, nevos. This was Hamming's big discovery. This is the Phrygian reflex of Proto-Indo-European nepot, which we have in Latin as a nepos, grandchild, and we have in Greek as anepsios, meaning cousin. But that R is it's added in. And so it literally means co-grandchild. So this is son or male descendant is the theory. Yes. May his son, so this, the theory is that this is some kind of middle or passive form, even though this looks like an active ending. May his son be struck. Deraliv, we haven't been able to work out yet, obscure word, untranslated. But then we have mekas ke kovis abretoi. So notice we have our ke, our coordinating conjunction, and we have abretoi. This is a new verb form. And it's quite clearly from aberet, the adber stem, carrying the bear. The theory is that this is a middle third person singular with passive sense of aberet, of aberetor, which we saw in the New Phrygian. But that was in the positive sense of Bas bring them bread. Sorry, in the negative sense of may Bas not bring them bread. Here we have it in a positive sense. May they be may brought to them mekas kovis. Right? This is the subject of the verb. Kovis is an I stem noun. And we see this word appearing in the exact same place as where words to do with punishment, trouble, or harm appear in the Phrygian implications. So even though we don't know the etymology, through a comparison of the syntax with the New Phrygian imprecations, we can translate this as something to do with trouble or harm, and that fits with it working with mekas, great trouble or harm. May great trouble and may great trouble be brought. Nun, you have one guess what this means.
Now.
Now, nun, temporal adverb from Proto-Indo-European particle num. It's cognate with Greek nun, Latin nunc, Sanskrit nu, Hittite nu. They all have the sense meaning now. It's one of the most regular words that we get. There you go. I should have added that into the list. But because we're in sort of historic sequence, we can translate it as then. Then eBay. The thinking is that this is a third person personal pronoun to them, or here in the sense of possession of them, referring back to the oi, the introduction to the apodosis. And we can see in the stem eBay cognates from the reflexive swear, Latin sibi, and Greek case. So third person personal pronouns. All right, so we have then eBay, nevotan, niptian, sirun, mireyun. Not sure about sirun, mireyun, but nevotan, niptian is nevotan. This is the accusative singular of nervos.
Oh.
So we get the final dental preserved in the oblique case forms. And niptian, this is quite clearly an accusative singular noun, meaning daughter or female descendant. And we see this in kinship terms that descend in other Indo-European languages. So from chnepot, there was the suffix, there was the athematic female suffixed form neptich in Proto-Indo-European, and that's what led to words like neptis in Latin, which means granddaughter. So here we have male descendant, female descendant, son and daughter, in the accusative singular.
With these being, I was gonna say, with these being singulars, could they be taken as like collectives, as like male progeny and female progeny?
Well, do you remember the Greek? Let's go back to the Greek.
Yeah, maybe yours.
Oh, it's the wrong way up. Me bios, me gonos genoito. It's not an exact match, but the Greek is telling us what the logical contents of Phrygian are. All right. So we're out of time, but I will review this translation for you. Iosni artsint imenan kaka oskavos kake kandidacity. To whoever this very shrine, around this very shrine, intending with wicked intention, intending with wickedness, kaka kandidacity, does harm in any way, ubetiv oi nevos deraliv. May their collective, quite possibly, may their sons be struck, tubetiv. Deraliv, we don't know what it means, perhaps an adverb or something, terribly or something like that. K, remember this is post-positive, so this is indicating that mekos is the beginning of a new clause in our apodosis, and great trouble will be carried then to their sons, daughters, sirun mireyun, we're not sure what it means, but the theory has been suggested that it represents either the whole progeny, in the case, the idea that sirun and that nevos and nevotan and ion wasn't specific enough. Sons, daughters, and whole progeny. That's one theory, but there's no real etymology behind that. Another theory is that sirun meant wealth and mireyun meant reputation. And that's based on analogy with other curse formulae that we see elsewhere. Again, difficult to etymologically prove that within the Phrygian. Now, we're out of time, so in case anyone has to run right now, I'll just quickly wrap this up. What we've done today is I'm just going to wrap up in case does anyone in the room have to run right now? Or are we interested in trying to finish the inscription? I'm checking with our friends online. Let's see. Watch your hands and feet and bread. Yes, exactly. Aaron, yes, I really am in trouble for scribbling on that monument. I'm not going to sleep well tonight. No one's saying that they need to run right now. Perhaps we can try and quickly finish it. All right, I'm going to continue then for the moment. Alex, would you, as you were keen to read before, would you like to read the next line? Now,
just the one line.
Yeah, the segmentation is. So can you read Simun to Mederitoi? And just for your benefit, I'll have the main body of text up there for you. So this is, I should have put a comma after that Mederitoi, I forgot to.
Simun in mene sinan ket torwetun zire aini we tugnu nerwas we.
Very well done. Very well. That's the end of our protasis. So what we have now is we have a second imprecation. So they're saying there's something else where if you're not allowed to do it, and then if you do it, you'll be in trouble. Now, for us to sort of have a guess at what could be the contents of this second imprecation, where should we turn?
The Greek.
Back to the Greek. So let's go back to the Greek. Always a happy time when you're going back to the Greek, my opinion. Alex, do you remember the Greek?
Something about chopping down a tree.
Exactly. Hostis perito hieron kakur getesai. Anyone who should plan to do evil acts around this hieron. And so we've already seen that curse in the first protasis apodosis imprecation in the Phrygian. or drun ekopsai, cut down a tree. Now, this is the second thing, aside from the nevotan nitya, that Hamig realized in her treatment of this, that sort of cracked open parts of it. So let's go. Second protasis that Alex, to my left, wonderfully read out for us in the Phrygian. Here we go. Simun inmene asenanda getorvetun zirayaini itubnuv nevos mederitoi. Oh, mederitoi. My goodness, accidentally duplicated. You can get rid of that. I should scribble that out, but I'm worried about further punishment from the gods. So, stimun. You recognize this, Maria. It's your favorite word. It's a neuter demonstrative dative singular of C. Notice that even in this old form of the language, they have this strange neuter form, which you really hate. I know that you don't like this dative form because it's lost its E ending for some reason. But you can see that it's extremely productive in Phrygian. It keeps coming up. It's even here in this old Phrygian text. So this, and then once again, remember, it's dative. So it's adjectively qualifying in dative. Do we have a dative? Immediately following imene. Now this is the same as iman, meaning shrine. This is the dative form of it. So you asked me before, by the way, Maria, have we been able to reconstruct any declensions? Well, for example, iman, not when it's the personal name, but when it's the, the word for a shrine, we can actually reconstruct it in the nominative, accusative, and dative. The nominative is iman, the accusative is imenan, which we saw above, and the dative is imene. And that's all. Oh, yes. Yeah, so the thinking is that this is part of the argument that this is actually a compound of a preverb in and a verbal stem men. So that when we get imman or immen, it's actually assimilation. The nu from the preverb to the mu at the beginning of the verbal stem, which is why it's thought to mean something like enmenal, which means to wait in a place. And emenes as an adverb in Greek means eternal, eternally. So it's thought to have a similar etymology to that, something like the eternal place. So that's another little piece of evidence for this etymology that we get from that snuck into the spelling there. Simun in mene. The theory is that this is a locative dative. In this shrine. Asena. This is an accusative singular noun. Again, we don't have a clear etymology for it, but it's exactly where we get kakun in New Phrygian. So it's probably, and Old Phrygian, we saw it above. So this, as kaka, theory is that this is a noun. It's clearly morphologically an accusative singular noun, asena. The thinking is, even though we can't get an etymology for it, that it has something to do with harm, maybe disgrace, something like that.
Something you don't want.
Yeah, exactly. There is a theory that it means compensation. Don't worry about that. That's just, I'm not going to explore that possibility today. That's just a fringe theory that I snuck into my notes there. Now, daket. We should be experts on this verb by now. Place. Does. So does asenam, does, shall we say, harm. So in this place, they do harm, torvetun, zirai, and then the aini here is coordinating. This is introducing another coordinated clause. So we end with torvetun, torvetun zirai. Now the thinking is that torvetun is a present active participle of a verbal stem, tor. And the thinking is that this verbal stem torf would mean to cut down a tree. Now you might think, what the hell? How do you get that? It's not attested anywhere else in Phrygian. Well, do you remember that word we read in the Greek, doru? Doru, okay, comes from a Proto-Indo-European stem, meaning wood tree. Notice reflex. Doru in Greek, the unaspirated voice, the unaspirated voice dental becomes an unvoiced unaspirated dental in Phrygian. Ro is preserved and or is preserved, and this glide, this v, is a reflex of u when we see it in Greek. This stem, torf, seems to be an exact Phrygian equivalent of Greek doru. Now, we don't get verbs like doru, doru is door or anything like that in Greek to mean to cut down a tree. But we do get it with other words referring to other types of tree, like not aspis. What's the Greek word for oak? That's drusis from doru. From another stem, we do see examples of this in Greek where you get a verbal stem referring to a type of tree. You can turn it into a noun stem meaning a type of tree. You turn it into a verb and it means to cut down a tree.
Phagos or something like that.
Yes, thank you. Yes, yes. Now, so the thinking is that this etun is a reflex of participial ending ons, which is a Proto-Indo-European present active participial ending, which we see in Greek as o. Phrygian, if you go back to the loud Verschiebung chart before, long o often interchanges with long u. The thinking is that this is a present active participle of a verb meaning to cut down a tree. So in this, in this locative dative, in this shrine, they place harm, cutting down a tree, zirai, by hand.
It's an instrumental dative.
Instrumental dative, by hand. Aini. So this often means, this is coordinating here with the sense or if. So cutting down a tree by hand, they place harm in this shrine, or if, aini, oi tubnuv nevos mederitoi. And the thinking here is that nevos is the subject of this new coordinated chord in this second protasis. And what does nevos mean? Son. Son, if oi nevos, if their son, tubnuv. Now the thinking here, yeah. Now basically we have two forms. We have tubnuv and we have mederitoi. One of them has to be the verb. Neither of them have been definitively identified in terms of their form, but we know tub is this stem, is probably from this stem where we get Greek stufelisto, to strike down. So either, but the problem is the ending uv does not look like a verbal ending. Mederitoi does look like a verbal ending, but we haven't been able to determine. So but the sense must be something like either mederitoi is some verb of conveying, applying. It could be a periphrasis as well, but we have from the stem here, tub, something to do with striking, right? And then mederitoi is no doubt third singular in its form, middle, referring to their son. So the logic is that this means either if they by hand cutting down a tree, place harm in this sanctuary, Simon in Mene, or if Aini, their son, oinevos, conveys harm, conveys a blow, mederitoi tubnuv, or if tubnuv is a verb, strikes a blow, and mederitoi is some kind of adverb, tubnuv and mederitoi must convey some sense of doing wrong. And then we get the apodosis. Anyone want to read the apodosis? Last chance to read Phrygian for today, for the most part, unless we do a bonus reading, which I doubt we'll do. So beginning from Corvus, anyone want to have a go? Last chance to read some Phrygian. Who really wants to?
Oisce abretoi lul oi nevotan.
Now, let's look at my apparatus for this apodosis.
Oh.
Exactly right. I was about to give you a rude surprise. There is none, because we've had every word here. So let's translate it. Corvus ke abretoi nun oi nevoton. Blind Phrygian translation. We're good enough at this language now. We can do it. And trouble
Brought to now his male offspring.
Yeah, and then may trouble be brought to his male offspring. Yeah.
that spaced repetition.
Yeah. All right, so there are some places where it gets a bit difficult. It's still not really determined, is it? What's going on with Mederitoi, but this is essentially 5 lines of Phrygian where we, thanks to the Greek contextual text, etymology, comparing syntax, all of the skills that we've learned today between our study of New Phrygian, Proto-Indo-European etymology, the sort of cultural element of how we're reading these curse formulae, all of these have given us the tools we need to be able to read 5 lines of Phrygian document. All right. Now, quick final thoughts on everything we've done today. Here is a bonus text for homework. This is the only example of a Middle Phrygian inscription. It's found in the 3rd century BC. We looked at it at the very end of the last session. There's some context there for you. Would you believe that even though there's a lot of clear Greek words in there that are personal names, and even though much of the vocabulary there we've seen in Phrygian we've met, this is considered to be untranslatable. I challenge everyone to use all the skills we've learned today, try and give this one a go. I recommend, if you want to do more Phrygian in your own time, #1 book for you to pick up. I didn't have time to add my bibliography, so please don't share this document with other people, because technically, because I don't have a bibliography yet, there is some plagiarism in there. I'm going to add a bibliography to it as soon as I can. But
jail.
yeah, fast no longer bring me bread. The main book for all of you to start with your journeys in Phrygian is Bartolomeo Obrador Crusac's 2020 Phrygian language. It's essentially a gigantic PhD thesis of his that got turned into like an 800-page publication. It includes a lexicon of all the Phrygian inscriptions, every Phrygian inscription in transcription that has been yet found, commentary on the phonology, morphology. It even includes a breakdown of the Thessalonian glosses we looked at. It's basically a repository of all the knowledge about Phrygian that collective scholarship has gathered together up until now in one book. And even then, there's stuff he leaves out for 2 reasons. Phrygian goes into some pretty crazy places. I was talking to, I think it was you, Alex, and Maria about it during the break. There's inscriptions that have been found in Bulgaria, which are thought to have potentially been an example of the Paleo-Balkan stage of Phrygian before they migrated across the Bosphorus into Anatolia. Also, after Bartolomeo published this book in 2020, he started work on a follow-up book called New Finds in Phrygian Studies or something like that, an edited volume. That was published in 2023, and by the time that was published, he had to add an addendum to the start of the publication listing the 10 new Phrygian finds that had been found in that year. Since then, if I do a Google search, it should come up. A remarkable find has been found. Here we go. A new Phrygian inscription has been found in Gordian. It seems to hail from, is there a picture of it? There isn't a picture of it, unfortunately, but it's quite a long inscription. Maybe there is at the bottom. Yes, here we are. Let's look at this picture of the inscription. There's a drawing of the inscription. This inscription here, notice it has the same strange variant of Phrygian that we just looked at the Vezirhan stele. And this inscription was literally found a year ago after Bartolomeo Obrador Crusac published that updated volume. Since this has been found, another inscription, Phrygian inscription, my God, has been found as well. A short one, but still. My point is that this is a very rapidly developing field in philology and epigraphy. There's always new finds to make. And as you can see, we have a large toolkit with which to make progress in this language. Phrygian is potentially going to be one of those last cases, I think, if we have a few more finds and scholarship continues to work on it, where you will see a language be meaningfully deciphered from the ancient world, happening in our lifetime before, well, we run out of languages and it becomes more about hermeneutics and interpretation, which is always there for us to get stuck into. Now, finally, the final reason why I encourage you all to look into Phrygian in your own time is, well, not just because there's more work to be done and new finds are coming out all the time, but because Phrygian is cool. I mean, just look at Phrygian caps. Don't you want to be wearing one of those? All right, guys. Anyway, this has been a deep dive into something really nerdy. We've covered Proto-Indo-European, we've covered Phrygian, we've covered Greek, we've covered a bunch of languages. I don't expect you to be as obsessed as I am, but I hope you've gotten a little spark of what makes this so interesting out of it, and a toolkit with which not only to be potentially the 6th Phrygianist in the world, but maybe also someone who works philologically with Proto-Indo-European roots, detailed analysis of inscriptions, syntax, and has the enthusiasm for it that we've all carried to the Phrygian workshop today. So thank you, everyone. Final statements. Thanks. As a novice, it was good to get a sense of the decipherment process and learn about a language related to Greek. Thank you, Aaron. That is exactly what I hoped to get out of the workshop. I'm so glad that you got that out of it. You guys have the PALAIA details. If you ever want to ask for any resources, follow-up questions, or anything like that, email us there. Thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone's exhausted, I'm sure. Make sure you hydrate back into Phrygian at home tonight, as I'm sure you're all going to. All right, see you, everyone. Thank you so much.